course. Here we go. All right, here we go. It's all yours. Have at it. Thank you so much for being here.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. Let's start with the other one. Excuse me first. Yeah. So before I begin, I'm sharing this link again because I do work for Reimagining Migration. The Learning Arc is a very good way of how to center your students' stories and their lived experiences, whether they're newcomers or not. It's a very good resource. And then also, please feel free to go to our website to get more information. We would love for all of you to be able to do that. And that's, what I'm here for. Yes, today I called it Ramadan 101 because I didn't want to give too much information. I wanted to kind of give middle of the road for people who may know something, but don't know too much, but just a basic amount for you to become allies for your students. But also you may have coworkers, and there's a little piece in there I have about coworkers. And then also students who may not be newcomers as well. If you can see, my name is Abeer Shinnawi. The story goes, it is our family name. My brother, I'm one of 6 kids. We're 3 girls and 3 boys. And the second boy, his name is Ramadan. We call him Ramadan squared. He was at the time born in the month of Ramadan, and he was named after the family. So, I take pride in the fact that that's my, maiden name, and people don't botch it as much as they do Shinnawi. But, I go by both. And I am Associate Director for Reimagining Migration. That's how we know the amazing Emily. I met her when I first started, and I'm so happy she reached out to me, but she's just such a wonderful educator and putting her students first. So I'm honored to be here, and I'm happy that she asked me. She did ask me to present later in April. And I think that was a learning experience for her too, because I told her, I'm going to be fasting and like 7 o'clock is when I'm going to really need to eat. So can we do it sooner? So that's why she shifted it. So she was accommodating my needs. So there you go. Next slide, please.
Being culturally responsive, right?
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. So our objectives for this session, I am a teacher's teacher. We always have to have objectives so everybody knows what they're doing. I love using the learn, link, and lead. What you will learn is the religious significance of the holy month of Ramadan. There's a really big religious significance regarding that month. Link, suggest ways that educators and administrators and communities can accommodate their Muslim students and hopefully their Muslim families. Lead, share some instructional strategies on how to discuss the cultures of Muslim students in your classrooms. And I'll be sharing a lot of resources that you can take back. And if you would like, I would definitely share my PowerPoint presentation. If you wanted to go back and share with your colleagues, I'm more than happy to do so. So that's what we will be doing for this session and beyond. Next. A little bit about myself. Again, I said I was Associate Director of Program for Reimagining Migration. I've had this position now for about a year and a half. I'm sorry, not a month and a half, a year and a half. I came out of over 18 years in education. I am a middle school teacher. So if I have middle school teachers in the crowd, put your hands up. We are a special group of people. I love middle school, social studies to be exact. But then I also was in the Office of Social Studies. So I have a lot of curriculum development in my background, which is one reason why I applied for the job and why they needed somebody. I am first generation Arab American, to be exact. My parents are Palestinian. And like I said, I live in Maryland, but I grew up in Chicago. I grew up on the South Side. So all my Minnesota and my Ohio people, we are Midwest clan. Welcome. But my family still lives there. I actually plan on visiting my mom and my family there next week to spend at least a week of Ramadan there. I am bilingual. I speak Arabic and I speak English. And I am the mother of 3 girls and 2 cats. That's a picture of 2 of my girls. My oldest is married and out of the house. And that is my husband. And I was telling him right now that a lot of people actually mistaken him for being Latino or Hispanic. And then when he doesn't speak to them in Spanish, they get angrier, thinking he's denouncing his culture until he tells them that he's actually Arab. So there's a lot of that commonality that we have, but that is my family. That was our recent trip to Arizona, which I loved. So if anybody's here from Arizona, welcome as well. Next slide, please. So Muslims around the world, let's talk a little bit about the background of who the Muslims are, what they represent, to give you a really better sense of how to approach it. Because when you talk about Muslims and you talk about Muslim students, what you're going to realize is that is part of their identity. It's really hard for you to separate the two. And Muslims from around the world, that's also a unifying factor. So here are some statistics for you to have. Islam is the most diverse religion in the world compared to other major Abrahamic religions, whether it's Judaism. And we can go to the next slide, Emily, just so I can kind of explain this a little bit better. This is a research done just on Muslims in America. And if you take a look at that study, and it did just some of the major religions, not all the religions are represented here, but this is from the Institute of Social Policy and Understanding. If you take a look at the ratio of the diversity of Muslims, it's really broken down into different categories, and Islam is really the most diverse religion in the world because you have Muslims who come from all over. You have Muslims in all parts of the country, all parts of the world as well. But if we want to specifically talk about American Muslims, the largest demographic is African-American or Black Muslims, but definitely African-American Muslims. And that really dates back to the inception of this country. People think Muslims are new to this country. Quite to the contrary, there are two moments when they did arrive with the Spanish when they first came with the conquistadors, but they also came as explorers, but they came as translators. They were merchants. They were very well with their engineering as well. And unfortunately, the history of African Americans, they came as enslaved workers, and Europeans really sought after, especially West African Muslims, because they had skill sets that they needed. And it really changes the narrative that enslaved people didn't have skills and they were lowly and they were educated. Quite the contrary, what they're finding out now from enslaved Muslims was they were very highly educated. They had high skill sets that were sought after. And reading a lot of their autobiographies that people are researching and finding now is also changing the narrative of enslaved Africans in this country. But again, the first Muslims to come here were either through the Spanish conquistadors or through enslaved Africans. Next slide, please. So question to everyone, and you can put it in the chat. Let's see if you know your geography and your statistics very well. Which country has the largest Muslim population in the world? Let's see, we have Malaysia. Okay. Lily went straight to that one. Let's see if you're right, Lily. India. Okay. Indonesia. What else we got? Malaysia. You can say it into existence, or if you want to put it in the chat, it's up to you. So we're between Malaysia, India, and Indonesia. Okay. Okay. I like it. So the correct answer, if I had to give you a prize, I would have to tell you, yes, Indonesia is the largest Muslim country in the world. But here is a little bit of a map to show you the population of where Muslims are concentrated. Of course, in North America and South America, not as much. But if you notice in South America, you have those little countries that have a little bit more of a concentration. Venezuela, Brazil, Colombia have a very large concentration of Arabs as well. Mexico has a pretty high population of Arabs, but not necessarily Muslims. We're very familiar with Salma Hayek, who has of Lebanese descent, but she is not Muslim. She's Christian as well. An interesting statistic here is Russia is actually 20 million people for their Muslim population. That's a large population for a country, but they also have a lot of ethnic Muslims there because you have Shakira. Yes, how can we forget Shakira? We have a large population in Russia due to you have Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, all of those countries that were part of the Soviet bloc, but also you have Chechens. So you have a large Muslim population there as well. But the countries with the largest population are the following. Go ahead, Emily. So the top countries with the largest Muslim populations, yes, you were right. Indonesia is number one, and Pakistan is number two. If you know the history about India and Pakistan, Pakistan was partitioned thanks to the British and creating it as a Muslim majority country, as opposed to India, which was a Hindu and majority country. Then you have Bangladesh, Nigeria. A lot of people don't think of African Muslims as having a large population. I live in the Baltimore area, large either West African or Nigerian population as well here. And then it goes down the list. And then number 10 is Sudan. So if you also take a look at that list, and you can bring up the next one, Emily. These are the countries with the highest percentage of Muslims. Maldives. How many people have thought of the Maldives as an island that has that many Muslims, right? So their concentration is higher. They're 100% Muslim. where Indonesia is the largest because of population, but they do have other religions as well. Mauritania, which is right by Morocco, large, 99.9%. Somalia, for all my Minnesotans over there, Somalia is a large population in Minnesota due to the resettling of that location as well. So that's where you have that. And then Tunisia in North Africa. So what you see, the correlation between these two is, it's a myth that when people think of Muslims, not all Muslims are Arab and not all Arabs are Muslim. This is where it comes to the concept of Islam as such a diverse religion, because of look at where all the Muslims are located, where you can find them. They do make 1% of the world population, but we're talking about over 1 billion Muslims. So it's also a larger group, and the diversity is really what makes it unique around the world. But also keep that in mind when you're talking to your Muslim students, to not think of them as a monolith, because they're all going to be bringing in something different based on their own ethnic, racial, and cultural backgrounds. Next slide, please. So keep this in mind when you're talking about the diversity of your Muslim students. Number one, they will reflect different cultures, languages, traditions, true to their ethnic and racial backgrounds. And I say ethnic and racial because I'm an Arab, and technically Arabs aren't a race, they're an ethnicity. And even among the Arabs, you have different cultures. If you go to North Africa, from Egypt all the way down to Morocco, they may identify as Arab, but culturally they're very different in the way they have some of their traditions. And then if you go other parts of the Middle East, like the Gulf area, like Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Qatar, all those areas are very unique in their traditions as well. They identify as Arab, but they have different cultures and traditions as well. Racial background, you can have students who were born and raised 10 generations Black Muslims here, African American, but they also identify as Muslim. And then the languages vary. Those of you who do have Afghan refugees, you know that even with them, they have different dialects. And they have different groups, individual groups that they represent as well. Number two, Islam is the unifier among students, but some practices may vary, again, based on cultural, ethnic, and racial identities. What happened with the history of Islam, really brief history, is, yes, it did start in Saudi Arabia, in the region, what was Arabia at the time. It did start in an Arab region, but as Islam spread and other people came into the religion, they would follow the major tenets of Islam, but they also brought in their own cultural differences as well. So you may find a Pakistani student who may have their Ramadan traditions or what they eat for their iftar very different than myself, who's Palestinian American, where our foods or some of our practices may differ. The only commonality is how they practice the religion, whether it's the prayer or the prayers that they do, and what they do for some of the traditions that are what we call fard, or mandatory in Islam. Number three is a very important piece. Newcomers may find similarities, but also many differences from their Muslim peers, even if they share the same culture due to environment. What I mean by this is newcomers, they will come, let's use our Afghan students, for example. If they come here, they may gravitate towards students who are probably first or second generation, but there are also going to be some differences because kids who are born here, born in a totally different environment, born with a totally different set of expectations, and what their norms that they developed as Americans are very different than kids who come straight from another country. You know, I encounter that a lot. Like I said, I was born and raised in this country, but when I meet other Arabs who weren't born and raised here, I'm kind of caught between two worlds. For some people, I'm too American, and then some people, I'm not American enough. So understand that with your newcomers is why you may not see them with kids who are first or second generation. There is also that little piece of those students who were born and raised here don't share some of the same similarities as you may think they do. So I think that's something to keep in mind. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about practicing fasting, or in Arabic, it's called Sawm. One thing you have to understand about the religion of Islam is the prayers, everything that they do, all the rituals when they do everything is in Arabic. The Quran is written in Arabic, it's read in Arabic. Even if it's not a native tongue of theirs, they learn to speak the important prayers and things that they have to do in Arabic. So fasting, the word for fasting in Arabic is Sawm. So this is one of my favorite authors. Her name is Huda Fahmy. She has a website that I shared, and part of the resources called Yes, I'm Hot in This. Of course, because as a hijabi, we get, are you hot? Yeah, I'm hot in this, okay? So she has that. But this is a great meme because when people talk about fasting, the person's like, oh, I know Ramadan is coming up and I think I'd like to take part. That's right, not even water for 30. And she's like, yeah, not even water. And that's basically what it is. And people, there's a huge meme that goes on right now. Yeah, isn't she great? Melody Stapleton, El Melody. She's wonderful. I'm glad you know about her. But yeah, not even water. And that's become a very popular meme or hashtag that people say because people are like, oh, maybe you can have water. Zero, nothing. So let's continue what we do in the month of Ramadan. So we observe Ramadan, we don't celebrate it because it's not technically a holiday and it's observance. And the two things that you could say to your students are either Ramadan Mubarak. Mubarak means blessings and gifts from above, or Ramadan Kareem. Kareem means compassionate. And if you've heard of the famous basketball player Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, that's where he gets it from. Kareem is also one of the 99 attributes of God. And so is Mubarak, but Kareem also means compassionate. So hoping they have a compassionate Ramadan or a blessed Ramadan. So you can say either one of these to your students. But again, you can ask your students if they have something specific to their culture, their language that they say as well. But these are the most common ones that you can say. And again, we observe Ramadan, we do not celebrate it. Celebration comes after the 30 days, y'all, when we're ready to like really eat and chow down. Next slide, please. So this was an interesting tidbit that I wanted to share because not only, we have Muslims all over the world, but when people break their fast is very interesting. It's fascinating to me. And I sit there and I think, thank the Lord I live in North America, because if I lived in some of those countries with the longest fasting hours, I don't know what I would do. England and Iceland, Iceland actually has the longest. Geographically, with the sun setting, it takes longer due to, if we have the summer, the spring solstice, and everything that's going on with them. Ramadan is also a lunar calendar, so it doesn't happen in fall the same time every year, just like Easter or Passover. So it decreases every year by, I believe, 10 days. A couple years ago, it was in the dead heat of summer. Now we're getting closer to winter, so we break our fast sooner. But in some countries, based on their geographic locations, unfortunately, they don't. So you have the longest fasting hours, you have Iceland, and then you go down to Portugal. I love Portugal by visiting them during Ramadan. Then the shortest fasting hours would be South Africa all the way to Paraguay, right? I might move to those countries during Ramadan. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll think of that. It might be something, but it's something for, it's a great trivia to have for people as well to know which countries are the longest and which ones are the shortest. Next slide, please. So here's some 6 things you should know about the month of Ramadan. Number 1, fasting happens during daylight hours. Sunrise to sunset is exactly what it is. Again, like I said, it's a lunar calendar, so the times are going to change and the months are going to change. This time we start this Saturday, and it should go for either 29 to 30 days based on the lunar calendar. No eating, no drinking, no smoking, no sex, none of that from sunrise to sunset. So I know people who are big smokers. So the first week is extremely difficult for them because they wake up with a cigarette and coffee. And it's a really good way of cleansing and detoxing your system. But you don't want to be around some of those people sometimes because you're like, they're a little on edge, right? I have my coffee. So a lot of people try to do the whole detox like a week before, and I don't want to take my coffee. I'm like, I'll do it cold turkey. It is what it is. I'll pop some meds after. I'm good. There are 2 main meals for Ramadan. What we call suhoor, which is the early meal to prep for the day. That's the one that people, Muslims, wake up right before the sun rises. Again, depending on the lunar calendar, between about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. You have some people like to do a meal that's heavy in protein to keep them with sustenance. If people are on some medication and they want to fast, that's when they take their medicine. Some people cheat and they take caffeine pills and then they'll take them during those time. So it really depends, but that's the meal that you prep for the day. And then there's iftar. Iftar is the main meal that you break the fast. And these differ based on diversity of culture. How some people break their fast is very different. I have a friend of mine who is Pakistani by way of England. What they do is, for a lot of Pakistanis, is they break their fast with a lot of snacks, with this really delicious fruit salad and a drink. They pray and then they have their main meal. As an Arab, no, we hungry. We will eat, we will have the main meal, we will do all that, we will pray, and then we will have dessert and coffee. So it really depends on the culture and where they come from and their practice as well. But there's really two main meals during Ramadan, suhoor and iftar. Also, those words, iftar is pretty general for Muslims all over the world. Suhoor, that name can different. I know for like in Urdu, they call it sahari, but in Persian as well. So it really just depends on where they're coming from. Dates are traditionally first thing to eat. There's also a very funny meme that says Ramadan is the only time I have a date every night. And it's also a sunnah. A sunnah is what we call the practice of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, which he also did, followed by a glass of water. And the reason why it's dates, number one, dates are highly nutritious. They have that really good sugar. And if you've been fasting for a long time, it really goes into your system and doesn't give you that crash. And of course, followed by a glass of water, you want the hydration. But also there's a teaching in Islam that you need to keep your stomach a third for water, a third for food, and a third for air. So it's also kind of regulating your body so you don't overeat as well. Number 4, fasting is a fard. Fard is an Arabic word, which means is a requirement or a must. But there are what we call loopholes. If you're of age, which some people believe is the age of 9 or 10, mainly for especially anybody who's reached puberty and beyond, it is definitely a must. But if you're sick, if you're menstruating for women, if you're traveling, if you're pregnant, you need to take medicine, you are exempt. Now, you may be exempt, but what you are also required to do is you can either make up those days at a different time during the year. You have one entire year to make up those fasts, or you can pay what they call like an alms to the poor or a charity for each day that you miss. My mom, for example, is on a lot of medication. If she can't fast, what she does is there's a requirement of how much you give per day. And it's based on what an actual meal would cost in the country that you live in. So that's how much you would give per day if you're not able to fast at all. So although you can't fast, there are other ways that you can kind of make up for it. This is not a diet. People think it's this crash diet and people lose all these pounds. Absolutely not. By the time it's 7:30 when we eat, people are low activity, you're famished, but also for some reason during Ramadan, it's such a beautiful time. You have these elaborate meals, people have, guests over, and so you have all of this delicious food. So what you're doing is you're eating a lot, you're doing your couple of prayers, and then you have coffee and dessert, and boom, you crash. So it's that cycle. So a lot of people do try to work out during Ramadan. Kudos to them. I try, I can't do it. But also some people do try to maintain a healthy diet throughout. If you can, you can. If you can't, if you end up having, a little bit of weight gain, that's fine as well. And then finally, it's a month of giving. So it's a month of charitable giving for Muslims. They're encouraged to provide meals, food packages, or monetary funds for the less fortunate. That's the main reason why we have Ramadan. Not only is it the month that the Quran was revealed and brought down to the Prophet, it's also a way for people to really understand what they have as, to be thankful for what they have, but also to really be compassionate for those who are less fortunate throughout the year. And when you're able to do that, then you are able to really take in the concept of Ramadan. Sorry, that's that in my background, Emily. If you're listening to some music, that's the clock. I'm sorry, I apologize for that. Technically, if we were fasting, this is the time we would be eating. There you go. And we have a clock that tells us because we're on the dime. Seriously, people will be looking for exactly.
Getting ready to mute someone.
No, I'm sorry. That's me. I forgot to put my clock inside, but you're getting the experience, everyone.
I know.
This is exactly how people would be waiting. Like you'll have the table set and people are like, okay, ready? And then when they hear it, boom, that's when you end up going. So just to give you an idea, that's exactly what you listen to. And then at that time, that's when people will break their fast. So right now it's 7:31. That's the time we would have been eating if we had been fasting as well. My apologies. Next screen, please. So some ways that you can help your students during Ramadan. And I got some of these ideas from a wonderful letter that a colleague of mine wrote to educators that I shared in the last slide of how educators can help, but she goes into more depth. Number one, students don't want to be teachers all the time. Right? They don't want to be the ones who have to explain everything to everyone. And that's common with all students, whether it's your Muslim students, whether it's your Latino students, whether it's your Asian students, they don't always want to be the ones teaching. So avoid depending on only your students to teach their peers. do your research. And again, I have a lot of resources that you can use. Do your research. And also that way students can feel like that you're being more inclusive with them, which is my next point. Talk to your students about Ramadan and help them understand the diversity that exists in your school, but also the diversity that exists in the world. We're no longer in this small bubble of the world. Kids are so interconnected now with internet, social media. They can learn things on TikTok like that. So if you talk to your students more about Ramadan, you're actually helping them feel better about understanding their diversity and making them feel more welcome into the school community as well. So one way that schools can be culturally responsive is provide an option for students instead of spending lunch with their peers to be spending it in a separate space. A lot of kids love going to the library at this time. They can read, they can focus on their homework, or they can just take a quick nap because they'll be tired. So if they can have an alternative place to go instead of, I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was saying, yeah, we provide a table in the back of the lunchroom for the kids. Is that okay? I'm like, no, the whole point is so they're not around food. You know, he meant well, but he just felt like he didn't want to exclude the students. And I get it, you know, lunch is where they have all their social activity. But I think it's important if you can provide a safe space. You know, if there's a teacher that they would like to hang out with, if there's a teacher who would honor that, that would be great as well. Students may not have the stamina, as you know, if you don't have that food and that in your energy, especially the first week, because it takes some adjusting for your body to not have the breakfast and the lunch and the dinner and all the little snacks. So the first week may be really rough for a lot of these students, but in general, as the month goes on, their stamina may wane. So also, if they can be excluded from some some from physical activity, especially with PE, or if there's a field day and if they don't feel like that they can participate, I think if teachers can honor that, that would be great. Another important point is students will be eating later, as you heard, 7:30. That's a pretty long day. That's almost a 16, 17-hour fast for kids, but they're also staying up at night because now that they have energy, they want to hang out with their family. They're going to have people over, but then a lot of kids go, there's what we call tarawih prayers at the mosque that a lot of kids love to go to because it's when all the community comes together. They get to see their friends, they get to see family. And these prayers stay pretty much late into the night, maybe 11, 12 o'clock at night. So homework may become a barrier. Because they're staying up, their sleep schedules have also shifted. And if they're waking up early to do sahur, some kids have a hard time going back to sleep. So they're just already tired come, 12, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, they're done. So, encouraging students to complete their homework maybe during lunch or in class would be good, or giving them some other opportunities for them to make up the work. Now, I also say this to say, I did have a teacher today reach out to me and ask if technology was not allowed during Ramadan. And she said a student had told her that he was not allowed to be on technology because he was fasting. I told her no. Some kids are going to be slick. They're going to think you're not going to know nothing, right? And teachers don't have friends and they don't know. So just be, conscious of the fact that you can look into it. Of course, we don't want to take away from students' rights, but some kids may use it as a crutch and just, use your what's the word? Use your judgment. And if you don't know, and if you're kind of confused, you can always reach out to me and I'll tell you exactly what to do. And I've had this happen before, even when I was in the classroom, like, no, that's not going to fly. So some kids may use it as an excuse. Next slide, please. All right, so I love, going back to Huda Fahmy, which some of you may know. She has a Facebook called Yes, I'm Hot in This. You can follow her on Facebook, but she also has a website, which I added. These are two graphics that she created. The one to my left is accommodating Muslim students during Ramadan. And you can actually go to her website and download that one. And it's really great. It really goes over everything that we just discussed, but it's a fun poster to have. And she's a great artist. She's a lot of fun. And that is her book, Huda F. Are You? I love the title, but her name is Huda Fahmy. So she did a spin on her words, which I think is hilarious. And then the one to my right is actually how to accommodate Muslim employees during Ramadan. What you have to understand about Muslims also is they don't all walk around looking like me. A lot of them also don't walk around having Muslim names. They came to the religion from a former religion, Their names may be different. So you may have Muslim colleagues that you're not aware of. And if you find out that they're Muslim and they're fasting, these are great ways to also accommodate them. And I thought these are really cute posters for you to be able to download if you go to her, you can go to her Facebook page and download it, but I also have her as one of the resources in the resource list. Next slide, please. And there we go. So I'm concluding with a huge list. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Like when you get into these resources, it's going to be a Pandora's box and you're going to go click more and more and more. I do start out with my girl, my other half, Sausan Jabed, who wrote an open letter to educators about Ramadan. It's a very well-written letter that you can share with your colleagues, with your school. It's addressed to educators because she's an educator herself. And then these are, I did not stop screen sharing at all. You can't see it? No. Okay, I'm not sure what happened. Somebody's asking, can everybody see the screen?
I'm the one sharing it, so it shows.
Yeah, you are.
Sharing.
Okay, maybe it might be your computer. Sorry. Yeah.
Let me stop share.
All right. Do it again.
And we'll go, yeah. Let me share it again. It's not showing what, the presentation?
I guess she said she couldn't see that page.
Okay. How about now? You'll see it.
She can, okay. Yes, all right, great.
Yes, thank you. Sorry to interrupt, but I can definitely see everything now.
Nah.
Wonderful.
Sorry.
It's okay. These are also great resources. Yes, I'm hot, and this is the bottom one that talks about, Huda Fahmi, but a lot of these, and also the one for learning and teaching about Ramadan, it also provides books based on grade level that you can incorporate in your classroom, which I think is also very important, because if we want to do the windows, mirrors, and sliding doors, the best way to do that is to have it through literature and students seeing that. I'm going to be honest, growing up in this country, I'm a child of the 80s, as I'm showing my age. I never saw any of this. I never thought I would. And I think it's amazing. And I love the fact that we have teachers like yourselves who are being so supportive. It's a wonderful feeling to know that my own children can go to school and find these resources and people who are so supportive. And I'm sure your students and the communities appreciate it as well. But like I said, this is the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more out there, but I gave you the ones that I really felt would be the most helpful for you at this time. But again, you're more than welcome to reach out, which is my next slide as to how you can find me. I'm on Twitter at Shinram1. And then you can reach out to my work email at abeer@reimaginingmigration.org. And that is my Ramadan 101. I hope I provided enough information as a teaser, but I am open. I wanted to leave some time for questions for anybody who may have them.
I guess before the questions come in, I just want to say that language matters, right? When it comes to honoring our students. Like when I emailed you, when I messaged you, can you do a presentation for Arabic students? And what was the first thing you told me?
I was like, I love you, Emily, but yeah, not all Muslims are Arabs and not all Arabs are Muslim. Okay. And I don't blame you, because again, historically it started in the, in what was Arabia at the time. It's spoken in Arabic, and people think because Mecca and Hajj and all that, that's the epicenter for Islam, but it's not all. There's a large 20% of Arabs are actually Christian, and I'm come from Palestine, the birthland of Jesus. So come on, y'all, got to give it to them too.
No kidding. Yeah. So they're all asking for your information. So
Sure.
I guess, can we go ahead and share your presentation so they have your information? Yes, she just shared.
That's my email.
That's her email.
Since this is a PowerPoint, yes.
I shared it. So just make sure that
perfect.
Everybody else should have access to it, hopefully. Yeah. But if you have a question that can benefit the whole group, please go ahead and ask. Just like I told you about the language, to me, that was a huge eye-opening. And just please go ahead and unmute your mic. There's only 30 of us. I doubt all 30 will ask a question at the same time, but please go ahead and ask.
Yeah.
There is a question.
Well, not a question, but Emily, you said language matters, and I really appreciated Abeer pointing out that we observe, or a Ramadan is observed versus celebrated. Like that's, I noted that right away because that wasn't the language that I was using. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Yeah, and Muslims themselves kind of go through it. But yeah, it's important to know that it's observed and not celebrated. I forgot to mention that when Ramadan is over, we have a holiday called Eid. Eid just means celebration. So this one after Ramadan is Eid al-Fitr, which means, food and after fasting. And that's a 3-day celebration. So that would be a celebration. And Muslims only have 2 major holidays. It's that one, and then Eid al-Adha, which is the one after people finish Hajj, and that's celebrating people who did the pilgrimage to Mecca. I know somebody asked about the prayer.
Yeah.
How long should prayer time be? We have prayers for sisters, some, as you mentioned, like to go
nice.
extra time. Good question, Heather. So for the prayer that I'm thinking students would be making during school time, which would be what we call Dhuhr prayer, which is afternoon. So it's 4 rakahs. It shouldn't be more than 20 minutes, 20, 30 minutes max. Now, if they're taking a little bit more time, maybe during Ramadan, what people like to do during Ramadan is they like to finish reading the entire Quran. The Quran has 30 chapters. And so each day people try to read 1 chapter. The first chapter is extremely long. So you may want to ask the students if they're going to be reading some Quran after or during their prayers, which could also prolong their prayers. But technically, Muslim prayer shouldn't be more than 15, 20 minutes. Even the sermons on Friday, it's known you're in and out within an hour max. Let's see. Thank you for the compliments, everyone.
You are a great presenter. I have to agree with that. You're just amazing. You captivate me every time you're presenting. I'm like, oh, give me more, give me more. All right, who else has a question?
I have a question related to prayer.
Yes.
We are looking into creating a small prayer space in our room. Currently, we have students using my office because we just had to make something happen quickly. What would, in a dream world, if I could do anything that I wanted between now and next school year, what would a comfortable space look and feel like?
I love that question. And thank you, Jennifer, for asking. The first thing I'm going to say to you is I would ask your students what would make them feel comfortable. What are the most common pieces in a prayer room, or if you go to a mosque, is definitely prayer rugs. Something for them to pray on, and also a place for them to put their shoes. We don't pray. I mean, some people do pray with their shoes on, but shoes, if you go to any really Muslim family house, they prefer that you take your shoes off, which is also a very common practice in a lot of Asian cultures as well. But those would probably be the 2 biggest things. Some people would probably not want any pictures. Some schools of thought in Islam don't believe in images of anything that has a soul. So making it as simple as possible. But I would also ask the students what they would like to see and how if they could be able to decorate it. I think they would be, above and beyond the moon that you're providing that space for them. Another thing is to make sure that they know where we pray towards Mecca, which is the Qibla. So if they have some help trying to use it, the phones now have compasses, they could always point northeast, but they may need a little help and assistance with that. But I would definitely ask the students, but prayer rugs and a place for their shoes, I think would be the first start.
Thank you.
Thank you. No questions off limits, y'all. I've been asked every question under the sun, trust me. I've been asked if I wear a bikini and keep my scarf on. I'm like, I think that defeats the purpose, but all right, I'll go with it. So no question is off limits.
You
Please
are so transparent. I love that, especially when you say, hey, no food, no sex. I'm like, did you just say that?
I mean, because people think it's just simple, but it's everything that gives you, not to say that we're sadistic people, not that we don't want joy, but anything that gives you livelihood, anything, that you really need to abstain from. And yeah, if you got it going on during that, your prayer, your fast is not eligible. You'd have to make it up.
Love that transparency.
What's energy anyway? Come on now.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I love it. We need to have her back, don't you think? You need to come back. All right, come
Appreciate
on.
it.
We got a few more minutes. If you have a question that, oh,
I just had a question. Last year I had a fifth grader who was like trying to fast and then he broke it.
Mhm.
He's like, I can't do it. You know, we were half days, but he
Mhm.
stayed a full day with me. And he's
Mm.
like, and he felt bad. And I would like just try to encourage, like, I said, so is it mandatory? I said, I asked him what age, you know, it's that they have to do it.
Mhm.
And I just said, you know, it's okay. I mean, if your parents told you, you know, try, but if you can't, and I just try to encourage, you know, you can try again tomorrow.
Mhm. How old is the student?
He was in fifth grade. I think he was
Oh.
10.
Yeah, it's still,
And his parents told him, like, if you can't, like, they sent him with food just in case.
yeah. And we did that with my own children as well. Like fourth and fifth grade is when they want to dabble and they want to feel like they're part of the whole system. But then, you know, they kind of give up. And so a lot of parents do the half day thing just for them to get used to it. And they'll let them, you know, they encourage them to fast on the weekends when they don't have anything to do. So yeah, just encouraging them, and, you know, kids feel guilty about things. So just let him know that his parents are supporting him. That's why they provided food. So definitely. Yeah. So
Yeah.
everything in Islam really focuses on when you reach puberty is
Okay.
when in Islam, that's when they have accountability. But for fasting, it is encouraged before that, just so kids can get used to it. But everything in
Okay.
Islam is really like the marker, just like in Judaism, you hit puberty, you're part of the, you know, the community, the religion, and held accountable. So that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. I fed a fourth grader last week. He was talking about, like, you know, I'm going to fast. And I'm like, okay, you know, I'll support you, you know. And
Right. So I had a question in the chat, which is good. So the term is Muslim. It's a soft S because in Arabic, Muslim, the word Muslim comes from Islam, which means to submit. And it's a submission to God. During Ramadan, you're submitting all of your, you know, your worldly needs to this whole power and this concept of being, you know, in tune with those who are less fortunate. Now, the term Muslim comes off as very derogatory, and it's not with a Z. It is Muslim. You know, some people may have a difficult time pronouncing it, but a lot of times it has come across as it's used in a derogatory sense. So Muslim is the best way to pronounce it. Of course.
Abeer, since, well, somebody gets brave to ask a question. So
Mhm.
there is a like a template that is being going around social media about Ramadan and students fasting and all that. So it is appropriate to like post that out there to say they are fasting, they're not eating, they may be tired. So that doesn't diminish their practice or what they're doing. Okay. just
Not
wanna
at
make
all.
sure.
Yeah. And we just don't want to also ding students on why aren't you fasting? You know, I heard you're supposed to be fasting. You know, we
Right.
don't want to police them.
Okay.
But I think it would just encourage other people to understand that this is what's going on with students, especially in middle school. They're very self-conscious. You know, I know high school may be a little bit more open, and elementary kids just love to share. And I taught middle school forever, and they're very self-conscious, so they may not want to say anything. But if they see that other people are learning about it, they're more open to wanting to discuss it. But we just want to make sure we're not policing our students when it comes to that, especially our female students, because when they're on their, you know, their period and they're eating, it's a green light for them.
And so
My brother-
that's like, was my question, because I teach high school kids, and of the 13 kids, I got 11 girls, and they're
Mhm.
17 to 19. And the boys are such babies. Oh my God. some of them are
Yes.
15 and 20, but good gravy, they are babies. So when we keep our girls right now eating in a separate room, as is in one of the classrooms with one of our teachers, because they don't want to be out with everybody else.
Mhm.
But how do you handle that with some of the girls eating and the boys saying things? What?
Well, I would. So, Michelle, are you in? You're in Minnesota as well, right?
I'm
Are you
in Washington State.
Washington State. Yeah. What I would do is I would have a conversation with the boys, or even before Ramadan. Well, Ramadan starts Saturday, so I would have a conversation, say, we are aware that some people may not be fasting due to certain reasons, and making comments about them is also not part of, good character and, showing support and love and respect for your fellow students. So I think we don't want it to spill over where boys who are not Muslim are chiming in and almost harassing the girls for not fasting. So I think just having that conversation, and then having, the girls just feel comfortable and say, you're there to support them. Some girls may shy away again. Like we said, it's something that's not really always looked upon as an easy conversation. So if you were able to have that conversation in the beginning, I think it would go a long way.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I think there was.
Yeah, there's one.
About Eid.
Yes.
So yes, Eid and how that might impact them at school. So I know a lot of districts now either have that day off. New York City has it off as a regular holiday. Where I am in Baltimore County, it was a professional development day for some of them. It should be considered as an excused absence. It's what we would call non-traditional religious holiday. Now, although it's 3 days, some kids usually just take that one day off. And this year, Eid may fall on a Sunday, so that might spill over into Monday. So if it falls on May 1st, which is Sunday, they'll probably also want to take May 2nd off and May 3rd. Just remember, it is 3 days, depending on your school policy and how they would address it. What people do, it really just depends on, again, the community. I grew up in a very large Arab community and a population. So a lot of the traditions that we did, it definitely starts with going to pray, the Eid prayer at the mosque or wherever they have it. Some people have little homes, whatever how big the community is. And then it goes with visiting family, just like you would do in any holiday: family, food, and friends. That's basically what it is. Some people do gift exchanges. What I love about my people's custom is women don't give gifts, they get gifts. And I'm okay with that, right? So it depends on the culture that you have and what they do. It's an all-day celebration. Here in Maryland, what I really like is they reserve Six Flags, what they call Muslim Day. It's kind of funny because I can see a lot of people who are so anti-Muslim, like, oh my God, the Muslims are coming, as they would say, but they reserve it so everybody can go and celebrate Eid there, Six Flags. So it's a really nice way for all the kids to come together. So that's what they would do. Just ask your kids if they are taking that day off. Some kids get really worried because if they have an assessment, parents may have them go, but if there are accommodations that are made, I think that would be great.
That's a great point, to be honest, and I gotta be transparent. I do not know if we're off or I don't even know when it is. I think it's important for us to know exactly when that happens, so we check our calendar and we advocate for our students. So thank you for bringing that up, for sure.
Yeah. Now remember, Islam is the unifier. So when people are fasting, and most likely it starts on Saturday, everybody around the world is going to be fasting on Saturday. It's not a local thing. It's not like North America is going to start and then, people in, Portugal are going to start a different day. If there's a consensus, the whole world is fasting at the same time. And I mean, the whole world and Muslims all over, just like, when you have Christmas, everybody celebrates. If they're not Eastern Orthodox, it's going to be December 25th.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So the comments here, a lot of people are loving your presentation. We have the recording. I am going to send it to everyone who signed up, and all our team has it. And I'm sure the presentation will be shared with staff. I was thinking about it too. I haven't shared anything with my staff on campus because I was waiting for this. I was wanting to make sure, what's appropriate, what is not, what can I share, what is not. And you gave us fantastic tips and
great
slides so we can share with and what I love about your slides is don't read. I love that letter that is circulating out there. Did you see it? It's amazing.
That's what I shared from SOSA.
Educators, and I read half of it. I have not gotten to all of it, but I wanted to find something just short, concise, that teachers can really read it so they can be culturally aware about this. So thank you for your presentation. We have 3 minutes. So if someone really have a burning sensation of asking a question, please ask. If not, just please unmute your mics and say thank you, because this has been amazing. Go ahead. 1, 2, 3, go.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
so
much.
Thank you so
Welcome.
much.
Thank you.
Very informative.
Pleasure being here. Thank you. I like the snaps. Yes.
Yes, that too. Yeah. And
Yeah.
Dr. Carol is here, and I have authors here who have joined us before or here watching your presentation too. So we're honored. I've learned so much. So again, thank you so much for coming on a Thursday evening.
Oh, sure. Thank you for having me.
For your time and for your love
Yes.
and passion for what you do and for making us better. All right?
Likewise. And thank you to all you educators who are providing the support. Really, from the bottom of our heart, we say thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Those of you on Twitter, follow the hashtag PLC4, number 4 newcomers. Abeer, you're going to have to spend some time on Twitter because we've been sharing a lot of great stuff today.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
All
Stay in
right. All right.
touch and wait on to our next meeting. We won't have one in April since this one is kind of considered our April meeting. And we'll have one in May. So stay in touch and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Emily.
Have a good
Bye.
evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Emily. This was so good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm gonna stop.
Emily, thank you both.